Welcome to the SPL Rundown, your weekly look at the SPL. This week, we have two special guests, Biggy, the coach of Radiance, and Cardiac, the coach of Eunited, join us to break down all of last week's games, along with Wormy. Be sure to stick around for my interview with Shinto, the mid laner for Sanguine, a little bit later on. But let's start with week 13 of the SPL action, starting with Ghost versus SSG. And I think this is the first game we've really seen Twig sort of flex his god pull. I don't think I've really seen him play the Ra or Baron any other time. What are your guys' thoughts on this set?
I can start. I think Ghost seemed to be hitting really good form. I think that for me, this set was like, it felt like SSG maybe dropped out of a bit of form, but Ghost, just in general, this week found some form. I feel like Sam was playing really well again. Mike seemed to be playing a bit better, kind of Fino as well. Like the whole team, kind of individual performances are improved. And
Sure.
as far as Twig's picks, I think he's probably just maybe experimenting a bit because I feel like he is someone that may get focused out a bit when it comes to finals times or at Worlds. So he's probably just trying to mess around a bit and just kind of see what fits and see what he wants to play. Kind of experimenting I also felt like SSG were maybe experimenting a bit this week. They didn't seem to kind of like the drafting this week seemed a lot different to previous weeks. But that's just how it felt from my point of view.
Sure. Well, I do want to say that basically the team comp stayed the same from game 1 to game 2. I mean, on the Ghost side, the only thing they changed was what Twig was playing between a Ra and a Baron. And on SSG's side, they only changed, I believe, the Solo and the Hunter that Nika and Vote played. So it seemed like both teams had their game plan and they were going to stick to it for this set.
Yeah, just kind of unfortunate too, because I think Dardas is a really sick Morrigan, but like just looking at the comps period, like the transformations like don't do a whole lot for you unless you're literally in like the niche situation where like the ultimate is going to help you out a lot. Like in certain cases you'll be like, oh, I can turn into this character every single time and get off like a really good like ult or whatever you need to do.
Sure.
But I mean, honestly, it just doesn't seem like there was any really solid choice every single time. Like, you can turn into the Nike to stay alive, which of course is great. Rom for the snipes, but just the fact that if you're turning into your own teammates when you're getting behind, it's like not the best situation to be in as a Morrigan.
Of course.
So you're kind of just forced into turning into the other team, which also was not the best. But you know, I liked the thought process, but the Nike, you know, I'm not sure how I feel about it coming back.
To me, it sort of seemed... Go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm not too sure like what he was transforming into most of the time.
Yeah.
I think Susanna is a pretty decent transformation as well. But yeah, I think they were just drafting like the Nike game 1, and they took the Wukong in game 2 to kind of just give survivability in that ult if he needs it.
Yeah, I think he did turn into Susanna a lot and Wukong mainly, from what I remember.
Sure. Yeah. The Nike to me sort of seemed like maybe trying to pick something away from Final K. I know it didn't really matter because Final K seems to be one of the guys who loves to still play King Arthur, even though I don't think King Arthur is particularly great. Was that?
I mean, that character lives and dies by Glad Shield.
Sure, yeah.
And Glad Shield isn't good. It hasn't been a good meta for him, and yeah, just the fact that he has a large number of abilities that can benefit from that passive, you just kind of just slam it every single time and buy super stat efficient procs to be able to get more bonus damage with it. So it's like easiest to pick up in the world for that character.
Yeah. Did you guys expect... go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think Arthur's like really strong, like early to mid game character where once he has like 2 or 3 items, like that character seems unkillable for a lot of the game when he's able to rotate.
Sure.
But if you are able to shut down the Arthur, it is kind of rough for him. Like I like that character, if he gets off the ground and running, like he is like really strong. But if he's put behind, he's just kind of a normal character.
I do want to say, you know, you bring up that King Arthur is still good. Is he still good even though there's not as much sustain in that sort of normal solo lane build path anymore?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, most players will start with Gaia. You have a little bit of HP 5, MP 5, but Arthur's just really tough to fight around like blue buffs and stuff, and he makes the team that has the Arthur like a lot better to fight around that side of the map, at least early on. And
Yeah, I
that's kind
think,
of what Ghost
yeah, go
wanted to do, I
ahead.
feel like. Also, the Susano pick was pretty strong in a Morgan.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
Makes it really tough for her.
Yeah, with Gaia coming back into the meta,
Mhm.
it just like gives you that little bit of sustain that you need as Arthur because you don't need a whole lot. And even with Glad Shield before, like it kind of was significant enough to keep him in lane, you know, so he could proc it multiple times. And kind of the same deal with you have so many abilities, you could just keep getting this healing. But with the like I don't know what the right word is. I guess like so many characters in solo have knockups. So many of them have displacements. You're going to be able to proc that all the time,
Mhm.
especially if you're up against certain kinds of junglers. Like if he was against the Susano, that would be another reason to pick it up as well. So it's just such a nice item at this point.
Yeah. I do want to mention we have seen sort of Ghost falter a little bit in the past weeks. I remember them losing to PK. Same with SSG. Did you guys expect this set to be a little bit closer? It was kind of almost a runaway for Ghost. They were able to get some early leads and snowball them pretty effectively. Is that something that you guys expected, or did you think SSG maybe had something different that they were going to show in this set?
I definitely thought it was a bit more one-sided than expected, just because I feel like SSG was playing pretty much far and away as the best team in the league in previous weeks. They looked much better than any other team, and so I think that kind of difference surprised me. But then again, I feel like this split, especially, but also this whole year, has just been kind of a coin toss at times because it's such a long split and it's all online, so it's kind of hard to maintain form and kind of maintain like the same level of intensity every week. So I'm sure for like a team like Ghost, probably they're always gonna be pretty good, but they're gonna have their slumpy weeks and then they're gonna kind of get back to form. So yeah, definitely unexpected that sort of one-sided performance.
Cardiac, how about you? Did you sort of expect this drubbing? I mean, drubbing might be a strong word, but do you expect to see a little bit more from Space Station Gaming?
Yeah, typically I would. I think Ghost has been kind of like their bogey team for most of the year. Like they kind of have their number, and I don't know if it's like a matchup dependent thing or what, but they both play the map really well, and they pick their fights. And they know where they're strongest on the map. So I don't know if SSG just has a little bit of trouble matching up against Ghost in that way. Um, there were kind of some odd like sustain picks as well. Maybe they were kind of having trouble dealing with that.
Sure.
I would have expected Ghost to win this set, honestly, but it was kind of one-sided in both games, so yeah, maybe a little unexpected.
I know one thing that was really unexpected for me was the Baron 70 mid. I remember I was watching Hazer stream when they locked it in, and I'm like, this for sure has Mike all over it, and then they go and pick up the Fafnir. What are you guys' thoughts on Baron Samdi in the mid lane? Is this maybe a viable place for Baron? It's been a long time since we've seen him in the SPL.
Honestly, yeah. I mean, it's actually so funny because literally that same day, Duke Sloth made a video about how Baron's win rates are rising, and coming from an insider perspective, they have buffed Baron so much over the past couple of months. And I don't remember exactly what the most recent change was, but it was on his 1 that he received a scaling buff, and so that helped him be able to clear a lot better. And so actually the utility coming off of the passive too just is so useful into comps focused around auto attack characters. So like that's literally Cherio's whole repertoire really has been like the Erlang and the Kali and things of that nature. So it certainly does work into that specific like character player matchup. And of course the stay is nice too.
Yeah.
You go.
All right. I heard them say like they also just think like Baron's brew is like really strong, which I don't know if that's. I mean, it's super important, but it does like help in lane for a lot of characters. And yeah, I mean, it is just like an off meta thing, kind of like Twig's deal and playing the Anubis right now too.
Right.
But they just like know how to work around it. And I feel like if Twig's like getting his damage off or getting his utility off, that he trusts his team to kind of finish the fights in a way.
I got you.
I don't think he's like gonna be meta. Like Cardiac said, I think it's just a bit of a niche pick. But I feel like the way SSG was drafting, Baron's problem is always going to be kind of early game, like clear pressure, kind of being abused.
Yeah, that's true.
But he is good he's good into Morrigan and lane. He can kind of threaten the Morrigan, and the way SSG draft compared to Ghost had a really kind of aggressive draft around the Baron, and so he kind of can just get through the early game for free. Doesn't I think he's there against like Jingwei, Sobek, Morrigan, and Akali jungle is kind of like
Yeah.
the freest early game you're gonna
Right,
get.
right.
So it made sense in the draft, and I think it was the right time to kind of experiment with it if that's what they were doing.
Sure, sure. All right. Any final thoughts on this set before we move on? Is there anything I missed talking about?
I think was this the set that kind of clinched Ghost as first seed?
It might be. This might have been the set that clinched Ghost as first seed going into Phase 2 playoffs, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that
I think,
something
yeah.
that's big for you guys, like getting first seed or not, or how do you guys feel about that?
I mean, it helps. I don't think it really matters. I think we were fifth seed last split and almost won. So, but it definitely helps. I think being able to choose your. Do you get to choose your opponent again? I'm not sure
I
if you
think
do.
so.
I believe so. I
It
think
is
that's
kind of
interesting format.
is a strong
Yeah.
opportunity, like option, especially for Ghost. They can kind of pick a team that their playstyle is good against because they
Right,
have a very
right.
specific playstyle. So it definitely helps, but I don't think it's like huge. You know.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. Let's move on to the next set of the week, which was Sanguine versus PK. And I know I was hoping that this would be a PK win, especially after PK was able to take games off of, or sets off of Ghost and SSG in previous weeks. But looks like Sanguine is still not as, still strong, still a strong team in the league, and was able to take this, I guess we call it a reverse sweep, winning games 2 and 3. What are your initial thoughts on this? The first game, I think there was a lot of fighting and brawling going on, and Sanguine really looked to slow it down in games 2 and 3. Is that sort of how you guys see it as well?
Yeah, I think Sanguine like a slow paced game. For me, this set was a lot about Shinto. I feel like he's been performing really well lately on Hebo, and they also gave him Persephone, which for me is not really a god you want to play against if you play against Sanguine, just because
Sure.
the amount of farm that they funnel into Shinto on those kind of picks makes it impossible, to play around the mid lane. So, and they are a team that also wants to fight and dive your mid laner. So, I just maybe think for me, I feel like they banned too many ADCs. I think one game they banned Jingwei, which it doesn't really make sense to me. But I think it's maybe a drafting thing for me a little bit, and then as well as that, also PK probably a bit out of form still. I feel like that break they took is gonna kind of was the worst possible for them, and they maybe still finding their way back into form.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, I think it was the game 1. I was kind of curious watching it as well. Like they banned away the Jingwei Rama and then like first pick time, which I guess they just had they just were trying to target out Netriod going in. But yeah, I thought that was a little strange as well. And then yeah, they obviously were valuing Hebo very highly, which I think every team kind of has to do.
Yeah.
Versus PK, and it forced Paul to play the set, which is not a bad character for him, but that they like triple ban Paul and then take away the Hebo, it does like force him onto something else.
Yeah, I think we did see the set and Cthulhu together on PK a couple of times in this set. And that seems to be sort of something that they are okay with. It didn't really work out for them, unfortunately, though, in this one. What did Sanguine maybe do to fight into the set mid? Because I think it was played all 3 games.
Set is like such a momentum character, so like if he doesn't get off the ground, he just kind of eats it for the rest of the game. And so just Sanguine's whole playstyle is like to really hold back, funnel the farm into Shinto, like Biggy said, and like just kind of hold on until it's a little more late game where they can really start to pop off in their team fights. So like kind of just not fighting as much. This like if you're leaving the set kind of alone and or just picking on him constantly, it makes it a lot easier. So I mean, doing things like that is going to really be what kind of slowed it down. But I mean, there were a whole lot of things that were kind of confusing about this draft from PK. Like I don't care so much if they like slam the set mid every single time, but picking Bacchus 3 times in a row, I have feelings about that. I mean, he's getting a buff very soon, but even then, I don't like this pick for Neilma, really.
Sure. What do you guys think about the Bacchus? Is it something that we can see more of, or maybe not as good as people want it to be?
I think Bacchus can be okay in certain situations. I think they were trying to. Neil wasn't picking top 3, and then they were bottom 2ing him. This is like kind of characters he's been playing recently. Neil's always kind of been Bacchus guy though.
That's true.
But yeah, kind of sticking to it all 3 games might be a little stubborn from them or whatever. They might have been. It just might have been something that was working in scrim, so they figured just keep trying it.
Sure.
But I don't hate it like that badly, but there probably were better picks at the time. Just going back on the set mid though, I think kind of Panatom's picks were pretty good into it as well. Like the Circuit set kind of really struggles if he's getting bullied by Circuit early to mid game. And I think that they did like get his beads like first or second wave or something like that as well. And then Paul's like plays typically very safe if he doesn't have actives up.
Yep.
So they were kind of just able to like free farm for that little while, and it didn't let the set start off the game very strongly.
Sure.
And then I think the Hebo jungle is actually really strong into the set as well. So yeah, they obviously had picks going into it for that.
Yeah. Biggie, you were about to say something?
Yeah, I do think they're just maybe forcing the set mid a little bit. I feel like it was something that came from when we played it. I think we played it like ADC against them, and then they banned it, and then it felt like it was something that they then started to kind of really latch onto. But the way they draft, if you're forcing a pick like that mid, you kind of have to play a magical solo laner, and then I feel like they're just defaulting to Cthulhu because like maybe Scary doesn't have any other guardians that he wants to play. So I just feel like maybe they're forcing it a bit too much. Maybe if I was them, I'd be like just picking Heber for Paul. Like that's his god, right?
Yeah. I mean, I remember I was able to talk to Shinto a little bit earlier, and he thinks that Hebo is just one of the most OP gods, not just like a meta god, but just he's meta and he's very good. So, you know, maybe that's a thing to ban out or try to pick up if you're playing against Sanguine.
Yeah, I mean, I just straight up didn't understand the Heimdall first pick. Like, sure, he's good, but like, you're literally the Hebo guy. Like, give him the Hebo, or at least give it over to Cubo. Like, they both have a solid Hebo. I don't know what the Heimdall does for them, really.
Yeah, I think if I was PK and I was going into a set against Sanguine, I wouldn't be worried about Zap having the upper hand in the hunter picks. I'd be more worried about let's ban 2 mages and pick the Hebo away, right? Like then you put Shinto, because Shinto does kind of fall off hard in his god pool if you kind of deny him a few things specifically. So I feel like that would have maybe been the better angle rather than focusing so much on Netroid.
Sure. Anything else to talk about this set? I know we didn't really spend too much talking about actual gameplay or things that happened, because I think it was relatively clean from Sanguine. Kind of, you know, Rayton likes to say PK kind of laid a wet fart, it seems like. So, any final thoughts from you guys about this set?
No, that's good for me.
Yeah, not too much. I mean, yeah, kind of just saying like they do kind of default to Cthulhu solo. So I mean that's kind of can be targeted out for them, and then it's going to be forcing Scary to pull something else out, or they're going to have to try and find magic damage from somewhere else if he's on a warrior. So I do kind of agree that they're forcing this set pick too hard, but in all fairness, like Paul does get really targeted in pick spans.
Sure.
So yeah,
good to have something back up. I guess.
Yeah, he also he's obviously comes from like the dual scene,
right?
So he's always like looking to play characters that are like super strong 1v1s. I feel like.
And on top of that, I do think that's probably where the Bacchus pick is coming from, because, like Cardiac said, Neil is the Bacchus guy, but also it's like, okay, they're probably thinking we need magical burst, and Bacchus is just can be kind of consistent, but he's not really. I don't feel like he's overly strong right now, so it's probably just they've probably gone down a little bit of a rabbit hole, but I'm sure
Mm.
they'll like figure it out for themselves.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's also
yeah.
kind of more of a divey support that can kind of just get in there, get his damage off, help the set, and the Cthulhu as they're diving. So maybe that was kind of their reasoning.
Yeah, and it's hard to play that style if you're on the back foot, I imagine.
Yeah, for sure. You can't be like really the ones getting engaged on.
Yep. All right, then, moving on to the next set of the week, which was Eunited versus Obey. This is, I think, lovingly called the Battle of the Bottom, but really just seems like Obey is at the bottom because you guys, I think, played it really well. I think this was one of the best sets of the week, if I recall correctly. I was kept on the edge of my seat most of the time, especially with Obey trying their new sort of strategy out here, which is do early objectives as much as possible.
Never fight you at all.
Yeah, never
Take all
fight you at all.
objectives.
Let's just do all the objectives. I think they got a 15-minute fire giant, which is kind of crazy in the SPL. So
Yeah.
And they lost 2 after that, right?
yeah, and they lost 2 after that. But what are your guys' strategies going into Obey? Did you expect them to focus so much on getting objectives early on in the game?
Like we knew Sino was gonna. I mean, yeah, kind of. We didn't expect obviously the Isis or the
Mhm.
Vulcan pick or anything like that, but we figured they were gonna be like a auto attack jungler with maybe a double hunter or like a bursting mage, and then just try and. That's kind of what they had been doing in the previous weeks
Right.
too, but they really like doubled down on it with the Amma pick as well, and like Isis Kukulkan, like they were just trying to get those objectives. And it
Yeah.
kind of did catch us off guard game 1, like as you saw. Like we didn't have a great early game, so it kind of helped them out a lot. But we kind of were playing pretty passive, which is what I wanted to adjust going forward. And we kind of just like let them have everything, and like we basically played into their hands for the first game.
Mhm.
Even though we were winning a lot of the team fights, like mid to late game, we were winning almost every team fight. But yeah, we just had a rough start.
Sure. Well, and then Scream gets Bastet in game 2, and I think maybe
Yeah.
the set was over as soon as that pick came through.
Yeah, they also had they bottom 2 Kukulkan Odin, so
Yeah.
I mean, I was like, all right, we'll take that.
Some interesting picks, to say the least.
Yeah. So
I mean, who knows what's going on in their brain half the time when they pick things like that. I mean, weird picks can work. We've seen it before. I mean, Scream is literally the epitome of that. And but I just don't get the Odin. I straight up like, what does he do?
Bobby played the Odin actually very well. I seem to recall there being some pretty clutch cages to, block off walls in the jungle and things like that. I don't know,
yeah, he didn't play it poorly.
He didn't play it poorly, yeah, definitely.
I think we were also like we were kind of committing a lot on him early, and like Odin does have slow immunity when he drops his ult, so like he was just able to get out a Cupid ult like that. And yeah, he did have some clutch cages and things like that, but late game he just is kind of a super easy target from a Sovik pluck.
Yep.
And once you eliminate the Odin from the fight, they really didn't have too much else.
Sure. But you're kind of sitting there quietly.
Looking at their comp, though, I was gonna say, like, how do you peel for the Cuckoo ever?
Sure.
Yeah, that Cuckoo. Yeah, I mean he was getting dove pretty hard. I'm not sure really why those 2 picks came out. All I can think of is it was just straight up for objectives, and they weren't trying to fight at all, which is what they did game 1. We took away the Isis, we took away the Poseidon, and they're like, I guess it's Kukulkan.
Sure.
And then I guess Odin has like a stim on his 3 as well, but he also has like the cage that can like block you out from objectives, I guess. I don't know what their super game plan was for that, but in a straight up team fight, they definitely just can't win against our picks.
Yeah,
Caught on
I agree.
Biggie a little bit. Agree with all that, Biggie?
Yeah, I agree. I think I'd have fault Obey because I think the toughest thing to do when you're losing is to stay consistent and like consistent in your picks. And I think maybe they've like the support pick seemed a bit strange at times. I think he played audio as well, maybe.
Yeah, in game 3.
Yeah, in game 3 he did.
But I think it's kind of it's hard to say because I imagine that their kind of strategy, at least when we played them as well, we felt like if we just banned Amy, it was like easy. They're not going to have this Amy just rotating with a sprint and then doing objective and sprinting away from us. Like, or like, please just fight us. Like, so I think maybe what they're onto is good. I think they just have to kind of get it right consistently, because what they did against us, I felt like, even though I think eventually we probably could have won that game, if they just keep sticking to that style and kind of perfect it, it is honestly scary to play against, because it's kind of, if you're slow at all or you're lazy, like you have one bit of laziness, you just lose the game, right? But it's just a matter of kind of sticking to it and becoming really, really good at it. Otherwise, teams, kind of higher skilled teams, are gonna just beat you, because when it comes, like Kodex said, when it comes to team fighting, your draft's just not built for that, so you're just not gonna beat stronger teams.
Sure. Is this a sort
Yeah.
of strategy that maybe stronger teams in the SPL can easily adapt to? You know, because like you said, it's just like being more on top of the timers, basically. You know, and like it's warding. It's like something that you can control a little bit and fight into, rather than just like getting blitzkrieged out early on.
Yeah, but I just think the other problem with it is a lot of the picks that they're using are just not good picks. They're just not strong picks. Like a Kulkan's just not good. Like no one really plays him. Ice is not really good. Erden, Audio, like these picks are just not good. And I think when we played them, game 3, they played like on her mid, and it just, like Athena solo, it just didn't seem like on paper, if you're like, okay, yeah, we have double hunter and we have this Athena holding over, that's gonna work. But outside of that, I think once we got a little bit ahead, we were like, this. I was just watching this game's just over. Like the draft's just terrible for for what's happening. They have to be snowballing and they have to be getting objectives. Otherwise, you're kind of just sitting there like, okay, I'm on her mid,
Sure,
and
sure.
and we have we have like 3 physical and an Athena or something, so it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
kind
their
of thinking like, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, you can go. All right. Yeah, I was just gonna say that. I mean, their strat can work. Like they obviously take games off like almost every team they play.
Yeah,
I feel
yeah.
like they do have some 2-0s, but I'm pretty sure they've taken games off like really strong teams as well. So like what they do works. It's just like being more consistent with it, and yeah, just finding like stronger picks that can work it with that as well. Because like I mean, Sino's kind of was getting memed for it a little bit, but he's actually like building XC and then just like running at objectives and having like or just burn them.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah,
But
yeah, there's definitely merit to it. Like I think you guys adjusted by banning Osiris. We just banned Amy.
yeah,
So there is like really small adjustments you can make that kind of, if that's all they're practicing, then it kind of falls apart a bit. But I think a lot of it can also just be execution. So if I was them, I would stick to it, especially like being in the position they're in. You found a style, and you found a style that, like, the whole team's committed to, and when they do play well, it works. So why not stick with it?
That's like my biggest concern, I guess, going into next patch too, because I guess next week is the last week that is like in the normal season, so obviously it doesn't matter so much.
Yep.
But like in the future for Worlds qualifiers and things like that, I'm like hoping that they don't ditch this style, but things like the Nox might start to reappear, which is I love Nox, but like moderately concerning, because I don't think that even though that character deserves some time in the spotlight, I don't think it's best in solo. So I mean, I hope they don't ditch their current style a little bit too much, just because Nox like does damage in the one. But like honestly, there are so many different characters that are getting really nice quality of life changes in the next patch too, like Athena and Terra and Bacchus and characters like that. So who knows what's gonna happen next week? And
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
I just really hope that they stick to what they're doing now.
Biggie, you had a thought?
On the same set? No,
I thought I heard someone chime in.
No, that wasn't me. Sorry.
Okay. I just had one observation, is that it seems like they're great at taking like the neutral objectives, but they still struggle to maybe take like towers and phoenixes. Is that something that you guys have noticed too, or am I talking out of my ass here?
I mean, I think that's just a lot of teams have the issue. I think sieging Phoenix is, even with FG, is like one of the hardest parts of the game, and you see a lot of teams will like get wiped on Phoenixes or like lose a fight significantly when they're ahead because I don't know, it's just really hard to defend or siege Phoenixes sometimes. maybe it's a product of their compositions as well. But I think maybe one time when they, at least in game one, when they had a really good shot of like just wiping the game after they had a big lead, like Hurry like one shot the ISIS
Mm.
with the Janisol, which kind of like saved that siege as well. But yeah, I think it's a lot of teams that have trouble. I think it's just because it's one of the harder parts of the game, like getting to that stage and just taking Phoenix straight up isn't easy.
Right. I think it all is like a lot of execution. It's very execution heavy at that point, right? So every little mistake gets amplified so much more.
Yeah, you'll see like a lot of teams like try and like they'll take like a 2-3 split or 1-4 split or whatever, and try and like whatever characters they think are strongest in the 1v1 or the 2v2 and trying to split the team up like that. But I guess if you're maybe more of like a sustained like death ball comp, you can try and just running down like 5 men on a Phoenix. But
Yeah, I think there's a lot of like, in a sense, there's a lot of RNG to sieging, because a lot of time you do your draft and you're not drafting for a 40-minute like Phoenix siege, right? You're not like, oh, I'm gonna pick this because at 40 minutes.
Yep.
They have this pick, so if we can do this at the Phoenix, like that's just like no team thinks like that. I think you can draft teams that are good at like drafts that are good at sieging, but I don't think anyone plays that way. So like, I think it was. I remember the only example I can remember was when we played Obey the other week. They had Thor Ra, and they were just Thor walling, and Wolfie was just not missing his snipe. So I think we siege once, and Cyclone got like one shot,
Mm-hmm.
and so we're like, okay, that's our FG. We come back the next time, Big Man's like just has a bit of a brain lapse or something. He's just standing at the Phoenix line and he gets stunned into snipe, and it's like, well, that's our siege, right? If it's a solo laner, he can kind of TP back or something. But if the mid laner gets one shot or the ADC gets one shot, it's like, well, we make one small mistake and we can't end the game, right? So there's kind of a lot of RNG in that fact, and maybe that's just something that's not gone their way. And like Cardiac said, their compositions probably generally don't help that.
Right. All right, any final thoughts on Eunited versus Obey before we move on to the next set of the week?
Nope.
All right.
I don't think so.
All right, let's move on to the next set of the week, which is Radiance versus Renegades. I know it was a 2-0 for Radiance, but I think we can all say that Renegades did look very good in this game. And Variety is sort of really meshing well with this team. How do you guys feel sort of coming back and getting the wins? And I think we learned that you really can't be given a Aurora Herc. Is this just Renegades maybe experimenting a little bit, trying to see what they can get away with?
I don't think Renegades are experimenting. They're not really in a position to experiment. I think they have to win this week to make playoffs. Or I think it was, for me, it was kind of predictable. I knew they would top 2 Guan just because it was a pick that we play a lot, and it was a pick that I think their most winning pick they had in solo. And they took Persephone. Like, we weren't sure. Like, I think Ven's really hard to read. He'll play a different god literally every game. So, I think it was just a matter of our side lanes played really sick. I think Benji and Cyclone both had really good sets. I think Kenna had a bit of a rough set, especially game 2, because his pick was just not good for late game, and we fell kind of behind. So it was like a tougher Willix game. But I think we're just kind of coming into some good form before playoffs. I feel like the feeling for me in scrims and games is a lot different. I feel like we're a lot more on the same page. We kind of know what each other's doing. We're a lot more aggressive. We're kind of dictating the game a bit more. Whereas I feel like previously we were just letting games go past us and just reacting. So I think we are playing better, and they just maybe struggling a little bit.
Sure. Cardiac, Lermy, any thoughts about this set?
I mean,
You can go, Lermy.
okay, I was just going to say kind of a little bit of a weak set from both junglers, and I think that's kind of been the consistent problem with Renegades, is that they depend so much on Lasper having a really, really sick game to be able to get them through that mid all the way to the late game. And like, he did have a really sick mid game, I feel like, on the Hun bots, and then it just kind of fell off.
Right.
Which is honestly kind of surprising. But yeah, I mean, in general, I feel like it just really sucks because they have these moments of brilliance, but their consistency has like slowly been getting better. But like even still, like they still have very off and on games where like one game they'll play super sick, and the next game they just kind of fall over and take it.
Yeah. Cardiac?
Yeah. So I mean, first of all, Biggie, thanks for taking a game off Renegades. It really helped us out.
Yeah, you're welcome.
No, but I think like you said, Benji, at least for me in game one, was just running that game so hard. Like it was. I mean, he did get a couple like buff steals, which is always kind of like 50-50, but those like solo invades, or he just takes Squan's blue.
Mhm.
It's just like really huge for the lane. And then like yeah, I guess I mean he had disco passive too, which helped him out a ton. But yeah, I thought Salt played really well game one, and then yeah, Cyclone game two just absolutely carried
Yeah.
that game as well. Like yeah, I think like you guys had a idea in mind with the Awilix, and it just didn't work out, which is just like a product of Awilix. I feel like sometimes she just cannot get into the game at all, and like there's a lot of shit that like will shut her down. But
Mhm.
Cyclone in those like fights was absolutely carrying. Like him and Aurora, like had a really strong game.
He straight up like did not miss once.
Oh
I
yeah,
genuinely don't think.
I think we played full fizz, and I think for me, if they're not after, then that game's a lot easier. I feel like that was a really smart pick by them, and I kind of knew
Mhm.
he might play after, but
Mhm.
we wanted to bounce differently, so we kind of just took that risk, and obviously had the idea of not going 40 minutes, ideally like 25 minutes, 30 minutes, but that's kind
yeah,
of just that's kind of just how it goes, and I think it probably happens a lot this year in jungle. I feel like where a lot of the jungle picks kind of, if you draft like that, you kind of just feel like you're doing nothing. Like I remember Kenneth saying like, well, what do I do? I can't dive, I can't do anything, and Cyclone just literally stand next to me and I'll win the game. Like so
Mhm.
that's kind of what happened.
yeah,
Just keep Cyclone alive basically, and we
Sure.
won.
yeah.
What?
It's really hard for Wheelix to like if like especially with the Afro, but like if characters like all have beads or are starting to buy Magi's or like playing a
Mhm.
Wheelix, like what are you supposed to do? Like you kind of have to like pre-ult and then just kind of like blink in and hopefully you one-shot somebody. Like it's really hard to get that play that character sometimes.
Sure.
Um,
I did want to
Yeah.
mention we see Cyclone really favoring this crit build, which I don't know if other hunters are favoring as much. It's I don't know if we've really even seen like fail not on Ramas before, even in the crit builds. So like, is fail not just like a very well costed item that fits great into these crit builds now, or what's the
It's so
stitch
stat
on this?
efficient.
Yeah.
It has literally everything you want.
yeah, I think what goes underlooked is it has this 20% CDR on it.
Mm-hmm.
Like the passive is nice, but it's honestly like the stats on the item are insanely good. And especially on Rama with his like ult change that happened and like you get this item, like he has like almost 2 Rama ults in a fight potentially.
Mm.
So yeah, I like the fail not pickup. And then like if you see that they don't have shells and they maybe don't have thorns or like whatever, then you can really just crit does do more damage. So I mean they started to building spectrals I think, but yeah, still was doing work.
Yeah.
Yeah, he basically just has 100% crit chance, so he goes up and the ult comes down, and then everybody can kind of crit them. You don't really think about like the fail not passive very much, but in a very dire situation, it could come in handy. But even beyond that, like it's just such a good item. I think a very big discussion that's been happening right now that Ajax recently commented on was like, why did fail not get penetration? And it was kind of like the crit item that they decided to put it on because crit didn't have any penetration, so they wanted to make it more viable in that way. But like, man, the stats are so good already. Just putting pen on it makes it a little bit like, it's just like if you don't pick it up, like you're missing out on so much.
Yeah, and it seems like the type of item that's costed high enough that you can't really give it flat pen or anything like that. You need to give it the 10% pen, because otherwise, like 10 flat pen on whatever it is, like 2600 or 2700 or 2800, however much gold it costs, just feels so bad.
Yeah, I mean they've been trying to really limit how much flat pen is in the game. They've changed it on basically everything except for a couple of items here and there. Then those are mostly like assassin pickups. Like you don't typically see those getting picked up by hunters. So just the combination of Adolescence and Fail Not together is like barely enough to be able to get you through like reasonably well.
Sure.
Yeah, and you'll see Wind Demon like picked up as well, which has pen on the passive. So
Yep.
it really
Biggie,
yeah, those two items really make up for the lack of pen.
Yeah. Biggie, any thoughts on this build? Is this any influence from you here, or does all Cyclone Spin just doing the big numbers?
It was doing damage. I'm fine with it. I'm not really the build guy, but
sure,
he can do what he wants. It's working, so
no complaints from the coach, right?
No complaints. So.
All right then. Anything else I missed during this set, or any final thoughts you guys might have about Radiance versus Renegades?
No, but it did kind of set up, I guess, next week's game, but we'll talk about that later.
Sure.
United, so.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the next set of the week, which is PK versus Eunited. And again, another set which I think I was hoping PK would win, but you guys had other plans for it, and United really take this one 2-0, evenly matched, I think, even though it was a 2-0. And I think we have to start talking about the set mid, because Herwin picked it up. I don't think I would have ever thought Herwin would play set mid ever, but I guess that's the call game too. Where did that come from, Cardiac?
I mean, it's something we had been practicing. I think a lot of teams have been started playing set a little bit more in various roles.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I mean, it was just kind of to take it away from Paul in a sense. Like I was mentioning earlier, Paul gets targeted really heavily in drafts, and if you're able to take away some of his top picks, I think his effectiveness goes down significantly.
Sure.
Which is why you see teams do that. So, I mean, we took away the Hell, and then we picked the Hebo and set, and and then he didn't pick top 3, so we banned away Thoth, and so he defaults to Uller, which we were fine with. I mean, it was a little rough because, like I said, Paul picks for the 1v1 in mid essentially, and so he built like Warrior's Blessing on Uller, to, like try and counter out the set mid, and it was it did have a pretty good laning phase, but I think once it came to fights, like
it
just didn't do as much as he had hoped, I guess. But I mean, we had just looked at how PK was playing recently, and how their drafts as well as their like play style, and that's why kind of we were picking in the way we were.
Sure.
Yeah, I think game 2 was really smart to drop by United, but I also think the drop by PK game 2 was pretty terrible. Like it felt again like they were forcing double hunter, and then what they had like Kuzenber and Cthulhu maybe again as your magical damage. I just don't think it's too easy to counter build as like a solo laner or even a jungle. Like even jungles, you just build Void Shield or whatever. It's like it's too easy to counter those kind of drafts. I feel like you need some magical damage from somewhere, like in your carries. But I can't really remember game 1, but this is a set that really surprised me. I just think based on form, because obviously they said on stream it was played previously and then streamed later.
Yeah.
But I think when the result happened, I was like, whoa, like okay, because I think PK felt like they were maybe coming to form and United was slumping a little bit, but then I guess this set kind of turned things around for United.
Sure.
Yeah, I think it was played like a week before it was streamed or something. But yeah, the first game we were going for more of like a sustained comp. Like we took away the Hell, and then we picked the Raw ourselves.
Yeah.
And then it was kind of rough. Like we weren't playing the fights as patiently as I would have wanted to. Like Scream was kind of like having a tough game, and like we weren't really on the same page as much. But I don't know if PK weren't like particularly playing that well either. I felt like so we kind of not necessarily got away with one because I think we played well, but I think the games were pretty good for us. And then yeah, in the game 2, like I said, like we kind of just it was what we had kind of drafted going into it, and we just kind of went like almost full dive in a sense. Like we had
Yeah.
the Cherno, the Wukong,
Mm-hmm.
the set, and we're just like just gonna get in there.
Gonna get
And
in.
it was kind of and their comp really could not deal with like just going all in on them because they just run off and we just chase them down basically.
Sure.
Um,
Lermy, how about you? Any thoughts about this set?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of just have to agree with what's already been said. Like PK's draft straight up just got counter drafted. Everything that they had just could not deal with the amount of dive that was drafted by United. Like normally you'd think that they would be the ones to be diving, but when
Yep.
you've got a set and a Hubwa and like you said, Cherno Wukong, like you just can't really deal with that kind of aggression. And like you would think that the Uller and the Zods and the Ram would like be able to self peel for themselves, but they just like straight up don't have enough options when it comes to that. Like the whole reason you see Rom getting picked up a lot is because he can just kind of like participate in fights when he's far away, but when he gets up close and he's forced up into the ult, he's just kind of like a sitting duck for the most part. And if you throw one or two members like straight at him when he's in the ultimate, you just die when you come down. There's not a whole lot of options after that.
Sure. All right. Any final thoughts on this set? I know it was a pretty quick set, so we're having a pretty quick discussion here. Is there something that I missed?
I just think on top of the Harwin thing, that didn't really surprise me. I'm pretty sure he played. I don't know if he played in SPL last year, but when he was playing long lane, kind of dual lane for us last year in that like weird meta, he played Set and Susanna, and like he kind of was really good on those picks and scrims. And then I can't remember which ones he played in SPL, but also played well there. So I think Harwin's like still a very underrated player, and I feel like he's one of those players that can literally play anything in the mid, like kind of in the mid lane. So it wasn't a surprise for me.
Sure.
Yeah, I think he played a lot of Susano. That was such a strange meta, but he played a lot of Susano, I think, last year, if I remember correctly.
When the when the mid laners invaded the duo lane.
Yeah.
What a meta.
Oh yeah, what a weird meta. All right, let's move on to the next set of the week, which was Ghost versus Sanguine. And again, Ghost just showing that I think they're the top seed in the league for a reason. They take this one pretty quickly, if I recall correctly, and in both games sort of snowballed early leads to get victory pretty soon. I believe game 2 was over in like 22 minutes, right?
It was fast,
think
whatever it was.
I think that was game 1, maybe. I think game 2 like got drawn out a little bit. Like Sanguine defended a couple Phoenix sieges.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of the time Sam and Panatom were kind of like 1v1ing in the late game, and Sam got the better of him like almost every time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again,
Yeah.
I think just Ghost has been playing like super well. I think maybe both teams were a little bit. I think they scrim each other a lot, which is why you saw the drafts like shape out the way they did.
Sure. I did want to mention we saw Afro in the solo lane from Yarkor. Is that something that you expect to see from other solo laners? Maybe bringing some other mages? I know Lermy brought up Nox getting buffed. Maybe we'll see Nox in the solo lane as well. What are you guys' thoughts on Afro from Yarkor or Afro in the solo lane in general?
Well, you probably won't see us play it, but it's just a strange. It's just one of those things that Yarko has as a pocket pick. Like I'm pretty sure he was practicing a last split, probably practicing at this split. I think he played a last split as well, maybe a game or two. It's just one of those things. I'm not sure why now he chooses to play it and to King Arthur, but I mean, it's kind of maybe they're just experimenting again. And I think the biggest thing for me this set was that it shows me that I think Ghost is kind of the team to beat right now, because Sanguine felt to me like the other team that was in really good form. And for Ghost to beat SSG and Sanguine in the same week, pretty dominantly, for was kind of okay. These guys are like they're in form and they're the team to beat. Kind of running into finals.
Yeah. Cardiac, you're about to say something?
Yeah. I mean, I think they were just trying to draft sustain from somewhere. I think in game 2, Ghost like banned out the Hell bottom as well, so maybe they were just worried about like him picking Afro and Hell, just playing some like type of sustain god out of the solo lane. Yeah, I think Ghost I mean, I think game 1 was pretty handily won. Once you get behind on the Tsukiyomi and the Afro, they can just kind of. They also had Ymir. I think Ymir was a really strong last pick for them. Had good matchups.
Yeah, no leaps on the other team except for the the Cerberus.
And they're still. I mean, they're still picking this Anubis, and it's not really been getting punished. I think they're either undefeated or have only lost once on it or something. So
yeah. Is that something you expect to see in the future? Teams maybe looking to punish the Anubis pickup?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, in theory, like Anubis is a really strong character, but in practice, I feel like more often than not, he does get shut down. But this kind of goes back to what I was saying with maybe Baron. Like, Ghost just kind of know how to play around that character, and like Twig knows like the limits of that character as well. So
I would be really surprised to see them pick the Anubis again, like in playoffs at least. Like I feel like if you're picking a character like Anubis, like Baron, you're kind of also leaning into that sort of surprise factor where you haven't really played this character very much, you haven't played against it very much. Especially more so of those like casual oriented characters, like you won't necessarily know exactly what to expect in a lot of the fights. And that's not to say you can't be prepared for it or like, come up with a strategy on the fly, but like, I don't know, just doing something unexpected is kind of Twig's thing. He's like constantly like buying Blink in the early game and things of that nature to try and just catch people off guard. And, it just works for them sometimes because they have the support system to kind of back him up and let him do what he needs to do.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't think. I actually think that is probably a pick that they maybe not Anubis so much. Maybe he'll stick to like Poseidon, Hebo kind of thing. But I don't think he's worried about playing Anubis in finals or like in the LAN games. I feel like that's kind of the way Ghosts want to play. They want Twig on something that does damage and does damage quick, or something that they can kind of play around. And the way that Mike and Sam play the map is they just put pressure on kind of on the whole enemy jungle, and then Twig's kind of okay. They just create so much space for Twig that then he can come in and kind of be those guards. I feel like when we played them in the finals last split, they were playing Nuwa, and it's one thing to say, oh, why don't you punish these picks, but Ghost don't let you punish those picks, right, when they're playing well. We were in picks and bans saying, why can't we just kill this Nuwa? But it's like we have a Hercules and like an Erlang Shen at our back camps, right? So you can't just funnel into mid and kill it, and so we just ended up banning it. Which made things a lot easier. So I think that's just the style they want to play, and it's working for them. And so I think it's kind of scary in a way that if he's going to play these off-meta picks and be able to get away with it, it kind of can make things awkward in drafting, because you're like, okay, do we want to ban one of like Twig's picks, or do we ban the pressure picks? It just kind of creates like a dynamic where you don't really want. It's like when you play against PK, you have to ban like 2 or 3 mages. It's not really a fun way to draft. So yeah.
Let me see what my my other notes are on this one. I had Sam and Panda Cat pop off, and early lead gets snowballed. So we really did sort of talk about both of those. Maybe not so much about Panda Cat popping off, but I do want to mention the slash lines here. 9-1 and 2 for Sanford Soccer in game 1, 6-1 and 7 for Panda Cat in game 1, and in game 2, Panda Cat goes 8-4 and 6, and Sam goes 9-4 and 9. So some stellar performances from these two this set. Is Sanford Soccer just like the best player in the league? Like, what is going on here?
I think he's top kills by
stellar
quite a margin.
Yeah, top kills by quite a margin, and just like stellar performances week after week after week. The consistency is kind of incredible too. You guys thoughts on that? Are we seeing sort of a new king? I know, for the longest time, it was always Adapting was considered maybe the best player, and Baskin has always been up there too, but I don't think we've seen sort of a run of consistency from a jungler that we've seen from Sam in maybe the past month or 6 weeks.
Yeah, I think he's playing really well. Kind of maybe the best player in the league right now. But I think the biggest thing for them was that when they were slumping, I feel like other players around Sam were kind of really struggling, and the fact that Panda Cat, like when Panda Cat is on point, that's when that team becomes really scary. I think, like again, to talk about the finals, like he just like absolutely popped off that set and made things like a lot more difficult for us. So I think if they have Sam and Panda kind of playing that well and the rest of the team doing their job around them, then they're gonna be like really scary again.
Sure. Lermy Cardiac, any thoughts?
I think Mike played Fender support,
Yeah.
didn't he?
He did in game 2. He did play Fenrir
Was
support.
that the first Fender support back in a while?
I think
It's
he
always
played
around
it
World.
I feel like he played it a couple weeks ago too. I mean, Mike
Yeah,
has really
maybe.
been the only one
Maybe.
who's been picking up the Fenrir support.
Yeah,
It's
I
hard
mean,
to
it
say
did-
whether it's Fenrir support winning them games or just Ghost being Ghost. But go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it did get buffed.
Mhm.
Huge buff.
yeah.
Really big buff.
I think the one change is pretty good. I don't think it was the same damage as it was last year, but kind of like a revert in a sense. And then the ult change is kind of nice. I mean, it's not a huge change, but it does feel nice when you're playing the character.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's just like another kind of pressure pick that forces actives. You gotta kind of be scared of what he can do. And I guess it was maybe into Hebo a little bit as well, but
Yeah, I mean, it just works super well into a lot of what they drafted. Like, he picked it in top 3, but then they also just happened to pick Susano after that point. It works pretty well into that because if Susano
yeah,
is
true.
diving and you're peeling with the Fenrir, then you just pick him up and 4 speed super easily. And I honestly think that 25% movement speed boost in the ultimate is kind of huge because you can move people even further than
Mhm.
before.
Mhm.
The only real problem that they had with this comp was that it was super hard to like specifically like get the beads off of the carries. So it seemed like every single time Mike was picking up the Hercules, which was like fine. They just totally destroyed Rongyu. But then after that point, they just kind of couldn't really break through on a couple of sieges, which caused the second game to go a little bit longer. But honestly, that could have just been a little bit of the ghost throw energy coming through because they had Fine OK diving and Mike diving, and they were all in the Titan room. So, it kind of is like that sometimes. But,
Sure.
when you're in that kind of momentum, in that mindset, it just makes sense at that point in time.
I'm reminded of our conversation with Genetics a little bit last week when he said Mike just wants to pick any god that can thorns you effectively. He seems to love like the Nikes in support, which is just like a physical god that can pick up thorns. And is that another reason why Fenrir is sort of in his god pool now, other than of course like the kit and things that Fenrir brings himself? Is it just another god that can pop thorns and run at press W key?
Yeah, I think it's probably something that he was just a lot of the way Smite pros think is if something gets buffed, then they start playing it, and it's probably just something that he was like, okay, Fenrir got buffed, I'm gonna try it and see what happens.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it hasn't been buffed yet, right? Like these games.
Or maybe just
It did.
I think it was buffed
I
in
think
these
it did.
games.
Okay, it was buffed for these games. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I think another like example of kind of that was like Guan Yu as well. Like Guan Yu got like it was a pretty big buff to his 3, but like no one was playing him before that, and now like people are like, oh, Guan got buffed, let's try him out, and then like a lot of people have been trying Guan, playing Guan now. So yeah, I think there's definitely some truth to that.
Sure.
Some picks just like go under the radar. I mean, there's so many gods in the game now that a lot of things just don't get played as much as they should maybe, and then a little change will bring them up.
Yeah, and it's hard to keep track of everything, right?
Yeah.
yeah.
It's all about player perception too, because this is something that we have a lot of discussions about, like especially after playtests and things like that, where Hercules is perceived to be like one of the best gods in the game, but in reality, his win rate is like barely above 40% in like almost all levels of play. So like people like kind of get stuck in a mindset where they like don't fully like understand those changes. Like maybe they kind of get stuck in the mindset like where Hercules might just be like the best character in the game, and they like, even though it does get changed, the mindset is still there, it hasn't really shifted yet. And that's just kind of one example, but there's been a lot of examples, and also examples in the other direction where a character is actually a lot better. Like, for instance, Bastet is a super relevant one where, like, she is kind of perceived to be really bad, but actually she does an absolute crap ton of damage. So things of that nature.
Sure. All right, any final thoughts on the set before we get to the last set of the week?
No, that's good for me.
I know.
All right, last set of the week was Radiance versus SSG, and I know I surely didn't think that Radiance would 2-0 this. Maybe 2-1, but pretty impressive win from the Radiance boys this week, being able to 2-0 SSG. I know maybe there was a bit of trolling on the Space Station side with the on her jungle in game 1, but to be honest, I feel like I've seen Cheerio play on her jungle enough that I kind of trust him to, maybe do it in the SPL. So I'm gonna say this was a great win from Radiance. Let's start with you, Biggie. How's the team thinking about this set, and what are some things that you saw that really stuck out to you?
I mean, I was kind of in shock when we first picked Ram and then they locked Hercules. It was a bit confusing. I didn't really prepare for that.
Sure.
But I don't know if they were kind of just trolling a bit or like genuinely had that as a strategy. It's not something I've ever seen them do before to a team or like expected, but I feel like we played really well. We played well as a team. They were fairly clean games. I felt like game 1 we just had to not lose early, and we were so confident that we would just never lose like to that kind of comp if we didn't get run over, and we did a good job doing that. I think game 2 they kind of went back to what they were playing, but again, I just think I have a terrible memory, but I think we were just playing like a lot better than usual, and I think again they maybe weren't playing as well as they had been previously.
Sure. Just to maybe jog your memory on game 2, I seem to recall a lot of Cabrakan ults and the Poseidon ults doing a lot of damage and wombo comboing a bunch of people in game 2.
Yeah, I think Kenna also had a better set. That set, he felt a lot more comfortable, like on his picks, playing against what he was playing against. And yeah, Aurora definitely played well. I can't remember if I think he played Cabrakan
both games.
Yeah, game 2, he definitely won the game in the last team fight. I think he did like 3k damage or something in the last team fight. So just a lot of like. I think the thing for us mainly is when we were slumping, I felt like we weren't playing great as a team, but I also felt a lot of the individual performances were pretty average. But now I feel like people are really starting to kind of find their form like individually, which is helping a lot for us.
Sure. Cardiac, Lermy, any initial thoughts about this set, Radiance versus Space Station Gaming?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that Rafford played Herc. It might have been the first or second time he's played it this whole year. I mean, obviously it was to take it away.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
I don't think he had a bad performance on it. I think he actually played pretty well. But yeah, the on her jungle, I don't know. Like, I know Cherry's been playing it on stream, and maybe he's been playing it in scrims or whatever. But they obviously they're obviously like locked top 2 or top 3, whatever it is. But maybe they were just trying to pull something out and put a hunter damage in another role if Cherry was comfortable on it. But yeah, it just didn't work out. And yeah, I think you guys first blooded the Merlin pretty early on, which got the Nemesis rolling, which is always good. And yeah, I think Aurora, the Cabrakan pick was really good. Aurora played really well this set.
Just to follow up on her real quick, I was able to catch Cherry's stream this morning, and he said that it was supposed to be a flex between into mid, but then I think they decided they wanted a different mid pick, and he sort of reluctantly took it into the jungle. I mean, I don't know. Usually if you have to reluctantly take a god, that means that the pick and bans didn't go the way you wanted them to go. Yeah. So, maybe it was just having a little bit of hubris or something like that.
Yeah, and I agree. I think Rafa did play well. I think he ran the lane and he ran the early game and he did what he was supposed to do. I felt like late game. There's just no way Benji was ever gonna die. I don't feel like against that back line. He was kind of having he was having a lot of fun getting him that.
Yeah, I can imagine it. Just like I just am so confused by the K1 draft. Honestly, like I don't see how you ever put yourself in that position. Honestly, where you're flexing something that you're fourth picking and you already have 3 physical. It just seems like I understand like the thought process of trying to put on her in this comp, but at the same time, I'm genuinely a little lost about that.
Are you guys concerned about sort of the dearth of 4 physical comps that we see in the SPL? Is that problematic at all for you guys, or do you not matter if the comp is going to work? It's going to work regardless of whether it's 4 physical or 4 magical or whatever.
I don't think it's that straightforward. I think that there's certain things that affect it as well. I mean, ideally, you don't want to run kind of full physical, but it also just depends. Like, I don't know. It just depends on what they pick as well, and whether their like mid pick can counter build, like build defense kind of freely. I feel like the Renegades game, they had an Afro, just built a breastplate, so it was a Willix trying to dive an Afro with like linked to someone with the mage eyes. Is like, what's he gonna do? So there's other factors to it. But I think it's just always something that's been in Smite. People want to play aggressive picks, especially the closer it gets to Worlds. People want to play more and more aggressive, and so naturally you're going to see more physical picks kind of in mid or in support.
Cardiac, any thoughts on that, or?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think having 4 phys is necessarily a bad thing. I mean, especially when you have like Horus or Hercules. I think those characters can be really strong and help you in the early game a lot. So I mean, there obviously there needs to be a plan to have 4 phys.
Sure.
And your draft needs to be. You need to realize that you're going to have 4 phys going into it, but I don't think it's necessarily a hampering thing. Yeah, maybe they can counter build you a little better or whatever, but I think if you get off the ground running and in a typical game like 4 phys is probably pretty fine.
I know
Yeah,
we see.
I'm in
Go
the
ahead,
same
Lermy.
boat.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say I'm kind of in the same boat. Like some people will say like, oh, picking 4 phys is a death sentence, but like it's not even really a handicap. If you're drafting it correctly, like if kind of like what Biggie said, there's a couple of boxes you have to check when you're going for a 4 phys comp. So if you're able to kind of both pick a comp that can play with those 4 phys in the right way, and you're going into a comp that they can counter build a little bit, that's still totally fine. But like they don't necessarily have like a direct counter per se to all of that. Then it's not necessarily the biggest deal in the world. Like I think what was said about like the aggression is very valid. Like for a lot of picks that are kind of in the meta, if they get off the ground running, then they will do super well. So picking physical is a really great way to do that.
Yeah, I don't think it's so much as well for physical as double hunter. I just think double
Sure.
hunter is like not good.
Okay.
I mean, there's like 4 thorns in every game, sometimes 5. Like even some junglers are building tanky and bias. Like you don't want to be sitting there as 2 hunters, kind of hitting a guy with 3 physical defense items and a thorns. I think that's more kind of the same as PK did against Eunited. That's kind of comp, and this SSG comp. That for me, that's a bigger problem.
Is it not just kind of easy to like soft rush into some of these physical heavy comps, or is that kind of still not good enough?
It works, but if you have a good burst mage, then it's not going to matter, right? If you have Sov.
Sure. That's true.
So once again, it's just like Lemmy said, like ticking boxes. Obviously, if you're going to run full fizz, you don't want to play like Janus or something, right? Or something like for them, like they played Merlin, which doesn't really, I feel like, complement the comp that well, unless their whole plan was to just control the whole early game until Merlin gets online and just run the late game. But I just feel like Merlin's probably not the best pick for that right now. He's kind of fallen out of meta. I think only Sanguine is really prioritizing him. That's just because Shinto gets all the farm on the map and then he's a Fed Merlin, right?
Yeah, of course. I did want to ask you a little bit about the Chang'e. I know you guys were probably banning out Dardes quite a bit. I see you guys banned out the Afro, the Morgan, and the Hera. Is this sort of the cherry on the sundae of banning out Dardes, taking the Chang'e for Big Man yourselves?
Well, Big Man's kind of one of those people that doesn't even know, I feel like, what he wants to play. every week or every day. He will kind of he wants to just last pick and just pick something that he wants to have fun on, I guess. But I don't think it was so much as taking it away. It was just we wanted to try it and we wanted to play aggressively into their comp, and kind of it worked for us, I guess.
Sure. Right. Any final thoughts about this set? The only other note I have mentioned here is that Crit Heim for the win in Game 2. It looks like everyone sort of climbed in Cyclone's backpack in the last moments of Game 2 to get the win. We haven't really seen Crit on Heimdallr that much. Is just Cyclone in love with Crit most of the time?
He just loves critting things, I guess. I don't know. I think he woke up one day and just started doing it, and
Sure.
he hasn't been punished for it yet, or it seems to be working, so why not stick with it?
Yeah, of course. What about you
Yeah,
guys?
I mean,
You
I do
think?
want to mention that NetTrade also did it the set before.
Okay,
So,
okay.
like, it's not necessarily as uncommon as you might think. And NetTrade literally, like, slammed autos that game and
Right.
tried his best to carry Sanguine out of the jaws of defeat, but that didn't happen, unfortunately, for them. And it just worked for Cyclone.
Sure.
Yeah, one quick point on the 4 Fizz again as well. It's just Sledge is a pretty good item, so I feel like that's kind of enabling a lot of these physical supports.
Sure. Yeah. Any final thoughts, or are we ready to go on to make picks for the last week of SPL games?
I'm ready to pick.
Ready
let's do
for
it.
picks. All right. Let's get on to the picks for Week 14. This is the last week of SPL games in Phase 2 before the playoffs and qualifiers and Worlds. So we're really getting down to the, I guess, the important matches, so to speak. Let's start with Renegades versus Eunited. And since we have Cardiac here, let's start with you, Cardiac. Who you got in Renegades versus Eunited?
I'm pretty confident that we're going to take that set 2-0.
2-0?
Mhm.
All right, then. 2-0 from Cardiac. Biggie, how about you? Renegades versus United. I think this is the set that determines who gets 6th place, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right, Cardiac?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Biggie, what's your prediction here?
I think United. I think leaning towards United 2-0. If maybe 2-1, possibly Renegades take a game if they have like something up their sleeve, or maybe Lasper pops off. I think it's just for me, it depends on kind of how Lasper plays and if he can kind of run the early game. And if Renegades get momentum, I think they can win a game. But if it's kind of even games or United gets ahead, then I think United will just win. They seem in better form, like kind of on the rise, and Renegades seem to be plateauing a bit or like slumping. So
Sure. 2-0, 2-1 United? What you got?
I think 2-0 United.
2-0 United. All right, Lermy, how about you? Renegades versus United.
I'm pretty confident about United winning this set, but I'm not so sure about as if they do it 2-0 or not. I think this is incredibly important for Renegades, and this is, as was already mentioned, like their last chance to really make something happen. So it's either backs against the wall, they crumble, or they pop off one game. But I don't think that they have it in them to win both of them. So honestly, I will expect a 2-0, but I could see a 2-1.
Sure. So 2-0 from United for you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm also in the same boat. This is probably going to be an United sweep from everyone here on the panel, especially considering how good they looked in the sort of the past matches we were able to see last week. So I'm going to give it to United 2-0 as well. I guess that means we're going to be seeing you boys in the playoffs, so congratulations. Cardiac.
I hope so, yeah.
All right,
Couldn't
let's
make
go.
it last phase, so.
Yeah. Let's go on to the next set of Week 14, which is PK versus Obey. Biggie, I think I'm going to start with you on this one. PK versus Obey, who do you got?
I think PK 2-0. I think if PK draft properly, which there's no reason they shouldn't be able to, they've seen exactly what Obey want to do. I feel like it's really obvious now how they want to draft the kind of their top picks in each role to play that style. And PK, I think, is just a better team. I kind of expect them to find some form this week. I think they play Renegades as well. So I think it should be a good week for them to find some form going into finals. But PK 2-0, I just think it should be too easy for them to draft against Obey, in my opinion.
All right. Lermy, how about you? PK versus Obey.
In the same boat. I think that Obey has found their strategy that can work, but
Mhm.
like Biggie said, it's incredibly obvious what they want to do. There really kind of isn't an excuse unless Obey suddenly like change everything, and like it is going to be a new patch, so or rather not this time. Probably in the playoffs it is, but missing that point. It's probably just going to be a 2-0 from PK. Like I don't really see any way that it could change.
Sure. All right, Cardiac, on to you. PK versus Obey. Who do you think's gonna win?
I do think PK is going to take this. If Obey keep the same style, I don't see them really catching anyone off guard as they did. I mean, they can get off to a good start, and then like if their comp is really based around just taking objectives, and if they're able to like catch a fire giant, win like a team fight, then yeah, they could take a game. So I'll say 1-2 or 2-1, I guess, to PK. But yeah,
All right.
I don't think Obey will able to take 2 games off them.
Sure. As a resident PK fanboy on this show, I gotta show love to my boys here. So PK 2-0. We gotta get some wins, get into the playoffs, and keep that morale high. So let's go PK. All right, moving on to the next set of Week 14, which is Ghosts versus Radiance. Lermy, I think we're gonna start with you on this one. Ghosts versus Radiance. Who do you think's gonna win?
This is really tough to say, right? Because I feel like Ghost have really found their form. They're in a very good spot momentum wise, but I also think that Radiance has the tools to be able to dismantle them should they get to a point where they're playing their game a little bit better. And also, Ghost kind of has that troll energy to an extent.
Right.
It's really, really tough to say because I think it could go either way. I think I'm gonna narrowly give it to Ghost 2-1, but like I said, honestly, it's 50-50 for me.
Sure. Cardiac, how about you? Ghosts versus Radiance.
I'm not sure what type of motivation or preparation Ghost is going to have going into this game. Just considering they're already locked
Yep.
in at first seed. I mean, I'm sure they're going to be taking the game seriously, but I don't know how much time they're gonna have prepared for this. That being said, I do think Ghost have been looking very strong, but Radiance also has been looking really strong in the past weeks. So I'll say, I think it's going to be a 3-game set. I'll say Radiance 2-1.
All right, Radiance 2-1 from Cardiac.
Yeah.
Biggie, how about yourself? Ghosts versus Radiance. I'm sure this is a Radiance 2-0 from you.
Obviously, I think they definitely look the team that's better in form. But yeah, like I said, I think this week for me is just a gauge going into playoffs, right? Like how good are we right now? Kind of. We found some form against like SSG, I guess, and then how good are we against kind of, I guess, the best team at the moment?
Right.
So for me, it's just like a gauge of form. I think there's a chance we can finish third, but I think Sanguine would have to lose to Obey for that to happen, which is kind of unlikely. So there's not I don't think there's a whole lot on the line this set yet, like Cardiac said.
Sure. Radiance 2-0 from you?
Of course.
Of course. All right, let's move on to the next set of the week, which is Sanguine versus Obey, like Biggie mentioned. Let's start with you, Cardiac. Sanguine versus Obey, who you got?
I think it's Sanguine 2-0. I think they play the map too well to allow Obey to do what they want to do. I mean, this is all just saying that Obey stick to the same style. They might have been trying something new, but overall, I think Sanguine are the better team, and I think that Sanguine play the map really well, and they play the team fights very well, and I think it'll just be a pretty clean 2-0.
Sure. Biggie, how about you? Sanguine versus Obey.
Yeah, I think Sanguine will win 2-0. I just think for them, if they win their third seed, and I think they'd probably rather play. I mean, I don't know. Actually, I think they'd probably rather play Renegades or United than going against PK, just because I think PK maybe potentially has a pretty good matchup against them.
Sure.
Sometimes I played them, but yeah, I just think Sanguine, even though they lost to Ghost the way they did, they're just too good right now compared to Obey. But then again, I think the way that Obey plays against PK will probably also show a lot towards that, the way they play against Sanguine. Like if Obey come out and they
Yeah.
beat PK, then it's probably a whole different story, right? But Sanguine, right now, Sanguine 2-0.
Sure. All right, let me wrap it up for us here. Sanguine versus Obey.
I'm in the same boat. I think it's almost certainly going to be a 2-0 from Sanguine, kind of just bouncing off the points that the other guys have said. It's been just like Sanguine are, again, kind of getting very close to that final form. I do think that they kind of had a little slip up in the past week of them, kind of falling off a little bit, but even still, they're just very, very good at team fighting. I don't think that they would allow Obey to kind of play the style that they want to, and as we mentioned before, it's like, if they can't get every single thing that they want from Obey's playstyle, then it just does not work.
Sure.
And I think, as mentioned, Sanguine just will not let that happen. So 2-0 for Sanguine.
All right. Yeah, this one, I really agree with what Biggie said here. If Obey are able to win against PK, it's going to really shake some things up, especially towards the bottom. PK may even lose some ground in terms of playoffs and things like that. I'm not sure. Mentality-wise, that could do really well for the Obey boys. It's hard to see that happening, though. So I think I'm going to give it to Sanguine 2-0 as well. All right, let's move on to the next game of the week, which is PK versus Renegades. I think, Biggie, we have to start with you on this one. PK versus Renegades. Who you got?
I mean, I think PK, again, will just be too good. Renegades, just for me, don't seem that strong right now. Maybe there's potential for an upset. I think sometimes Renegades, when the games go long, PK do tend to sometimes struggle. But
Sure.
I would say, I'm just going to say PK 2-0. I just think based on form and just kind of, I think PK will maybe kick it up a bit this week and get some form back and kind of really focus on playing a lot better.
Sure. All right. 2-0 from PK for you?
Yep.
How about you? PK versus RNG.
I think if Renegades don't win their set on Friday, then there's no real chance. I think that, unfortunately, if they do take that L, their motivation is just going to be gone. Morale is in the toilet, as one might say. And they're just honestly going to fold under the pressure, I feel like, if that happens. But in a world where that doesn't happen, which, I mean, all of us did not expect that. So, I mean, in the slight chance that it does happen, it could work for them. They could find a game or even the set win. But realistically, compared with the rest of our expectations as well, I think it's going to be a PK 2-0.
PK 2-0 for Lermy. Let's finish it off with you here, Cardiac. PK versus Renegades.
I'll go PK 2-1. I think Renegades do have the potential to take a game off them. But yeah, I just don't see them completely winning the set here. And yeah, especially it does really depend on how our matchup goes with them because yeah, I mean, like you said, their motivation might drop if they lose that, or they might be riding high if they win. But I still believe that regardless of that result, I think PK will win this one 2-1.
Sure. I'm going to go for PK. I think it's going to be PK 2-1. So I think there is a bit of maybe like an older brother, younger brother relationship between Cuvo and Lasbra, and Cuvo just not going to let young Lassie win against him, right? So it's got to be PK that take the victory. All right, last game of Phase 2 of SPL Season 7 is coming up. This is SSG versus Eunited. Lermy Wormy, let's start with you here. SSG versus Eunited. Who you got?
I mean, last week SSG kind of had a little slip up. Their drafts weren't amazing. But in general, I still think that they are kind of a strong step above United in terms of just how they've been playing and things of that nature. So I think I'm expecting a 2-0 from Space Station, but United has always been one to kind of surprise and take games off the top too. So I could see a world where it's a 2-1, but I think it's going to be 2-0 SSG.
Sure. Cardiac, how about you? SSG versus United.
Yeah, I think this game, I'm not sure what to expect in this game because I don't know how serious Space Station's going to be taking this one. some of their picks last week kind of indicated that they might be trying some stuff going towards playoffs. And yeah, obviously, in terms of seeding, this match doesn't matter. But I'm going to go with our boys and say we're going to win 2-0.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right, Biggie, wrap us up here. Space Station Gaming versus Eunited.
I think this set is kind of like a sleeper for the week. I think a lot of people going into week kind of look at Renegades and United and us versus Ghost as like big games, but I think this has potential to be like a really exciting set for viewers. I feel based on SSG's kind of performance this past week and the way that United's playing, I actually think it could kind of just come down to like the coin toss almost, like the drafts, kind of the way you can ban based on which side you get against SSG. So
Yeah.
I am going to go United 2-1 just because I'm a fan of the wind.
Sure.
Let's go.
Yeah, I kind of feel like SSG maybe are, you know how like NFL teams sort of like they take the last couple weeks off because it's a grueling season. I feel like this was probably a grueling phase, not just for SSG but for all the teams, and they've realized that they probably don't gain too much from these wins, you know, this late on, and you know maybe it's just better to keep the mental good. So I kind of feel like they might slip up a little bit, and I think I'm going to give this win to United as well. I think it'll be a 2-1 win for United. And that brings us to the end of Phase 2, Season 7 SPL. So the only thing that's left, I guess, is, playoffs and qualifiers. But I wanted to ask both of you here, since we got you coaches on, there's going to be maybe a 5-week break in, from the end of qualifiers until the start of Worlds. Are you guys worried about, rustiness developing during that? That's quite a long time to, not be playing meaningful matches. I know scrims are one thing, but, it's completely different to be playing a match. Are you guys concerned for your teams about that break at all?
I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say. I think it is quite weird. I've always found it quite weird. I would have preferred Worlds just be in November, just get it out of the way, and so I can go home. But apparently, we want to drag it out to January again for some reason. So, I mean, it's the same for every team. So it's like, of course, it is going to be a bit of a problem, like match fitness and like what if you qualify for Worlds like early? Is that good or not? Because obviously. I think last year, like you could argue, was it beneficial for the teams that played at the play-ins to get a bit more kind of actual game time and match fitness? But it's generally going to be the same for every team, so I don't think it matters. It's also like maybe a few things will change, kind of like patch-wise, and it's just you either play well at Worlds or you don't. That's just kind of how it is for me.
Sure. Cardiac, how about yourself? Are you concerned at all about the big break between qualifiers and Worlds?
I think it's a fair point to bring up, but all teams are going to be facing it. I'm not super worried myself. It would be. It is the first time that we're playing on LAN and stuff as well, which is nice. But I'm not super worried about being rusty or whatever. There is potential for picks and strategies to be different, as there's a couple patches that are coming out before then.
Yep.
I guess that would just be before Worlds, but yeah. I'm not super worried about rustiness, but there is a big difference between scrimming and just getting SPL games or stuff like that.
Sure. Enlighten me, are the playoff matches or qualifiers going to be on LAN at all, or is that all online stuff? You think so, Lermy?
I'm pretty sure no.
Oh, okay.
Just because they, at least from the schedule that I was given, it seems like they're only trying to really do in studio stuff for Worlds, and that kind of be it.
Sure. So how are they going to do sort of the EU qualifiers? Is that going to happen in EU or? I
They
don't know.
haven't told us any details yet, so I don't know. I mean, both from
Okay.
a caster and a dev standpoint,
Right.
I don't know.
Okay. I just didn't know if there was any information that anybody had.
Nope.
I have no
Yeah,
information.
yeah, I'm not too sure. I'm pretty sure the playoffs will be online, and that
Mhm.
they're just planning for Worlds to be LAN. But yeah, again, I'm not like 100% on that.
Yeah, and I don't think there have been any official statements from Hi-Rez about dates for these events yet either. I don't know. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about Smite SPL, or is there something on your mind? Are there other coaches, other teams that are pissing you guys off?
One thing I just want to kind of interject real quick. We did kind of mention like a little bit about like the patches coming in, and so basically this 7-11 patch
Mhm.
with some of the like Nox, Athena, Terra, Bacchus changes are some of the last like major balance changes that are going to be coming in for the season. There might be like a couple of adjustments. Like I know people are complaining about Raw and set in like every single game, so they might see a little tweak here and there, but from my understanding, there really should not be any big major balance changes coming in 11 bonus, 12 and 12 bonus, and they're also going to be longer patches as well.
Okay.
So each of those is 6 weeks long as compared to the normal 4-week cycle.
Right. All right.
Yeah, only thing I would say is I think Loki will be available
Yes.
for playoffs or something too.
Sure.
So maybe we see teams pull him out. That would be kind of hype for fans, I would think.
I think it would be pretty hype for Finn. It's been a long time since we've seen Loki in competitive play.
Yeah, Gore said since season 3, if you're not counting console.
Yeah,
Wow.
that sounds right. What about you, Becky? Anything in the league that is interesting to you at all?
Oh, just looking forward to the world's longest split being over and finally getting into kind of the games that matter, I guess. So
Sure.
it's exciting to. It's always exciting to kind of get towards the end of the year and towards Worlds. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think everyone is. Thanks for watching the SPL Rundown this week. Be sure to catch us every week during the phase. And, we're still working out what we're going to do for playoffs and qualifiers and worlds. But we will have some episodes about those tournaments in the future that hopefully will be on Smite Game. If you have any thoughts about future guests, please be sure to DM me at APAM2 or at APAM Productions on Twitter. And, as always, extended cuts of my discussion with analysts and my player interviews are available on our YouTube, which is APAM Productions on YouTube. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys soon.